The Bubonic Plague, the disease responsible for millions of deaths annually, complete social structure change, and international economic devastation. With its impact ranging across the entire continent of Eurasia, the plague's scope and magnitude made it one of the most memorable diseases ever to set foot on planet Earth. Causing the fall of empires that were once seen as unstoppable and breaking societal development, the plague is possibly the most impactful event to ever occur. In this video, we will explore the plague's history through the research question, how did the bubonic plague spread throughout the Silk Road and what were the impacts? To answer this question, we go back thousands of years to a time before civilizations. The origin of the plague. The bubonic disease comes from a bacteria called Y. pestis. While the exact location of the bacteria's origin is hard to pinpoint, it is generally assumed that it was created in China 5,600 years ago. This bacteria was known as a virus that infects through traveling bodies, meaning that carriers such as human or animals would be the ones infecting others. While the disease can become airborne under very specific conditions, it is not very infectious. Because of this, the virus resorts to other means of infection, so the most common and successful way was the transportation through animals. The first animal to ever receive this disease was wild rodents. An important detail to understand is the current ecosystems. During that time period, the squaw's human development and temperature was perfect for fostering rodent populations. This allowed the plague to fester quickly and also infect other animal species such as fleas through blood. An interesting fact about fleas and rodents is they have a parasitic relationship. The rodent serves as a host to feed the flea, but also transports it to alternative hosts. This form of teamwork also allowed the fleas to drop at any location they deemed optimal, and thereby affecting every location between two different destinations. This relationship was essential to the movement of the disease over long periods of time. Following history, the plague slowly moves west through caravans. Caravans are a group of people, especially traders and pilgrims, traveling together. They were a very common way to move along the Silk Road. These groups were important for trade and traverse to many diverse locations. It was very common for rodents to follow these crowds of humans due to domestication standards, or for fleas to latch on to their commodities. Humans would often leave behind food, which guaranteed survival for these massive rodent populations. In addition to this, the grains that they were carrying supplied great nests for fleas. While this method of infection worked, it was not very efficient and actually took a very long time. This is because of three key reasons. The first reason is the length of the journey. The Silk Road was thousands of miles long, and some trips took years to complete. The lifespan of these fleas was only a few months max, meaning that they were only able to infect over short trips and short distances. The second problem, which is connected to this, is being able to infect after a period of time. While this is still being tested in labs, it is seen that many fleas lose the potency of the bacteria after a period of time. The last problem was the suitability of the climate. Caravans would traverse through extremely hot and low deserts to cold and high mountains. Fleas would have to survive this arduous journey of fluctuating temperatures, which would be extremely difficult. Because of these downsides of caravan infection, the disease was actually very local for many years and really just stayed in China. Next, we fast forward a few thousand years and into a city called Pelusium. The Plague of Justinian. The year is 541 AD, and the city of Pelusium is thriving. Pelusium supported the Byzantine Empire with majority of its food from its croplands. It was also a mass trading hub with thousands of caravans passing through it every single month. However, it also had thousands of rodents and fleas due to the plentiful amount of grains that it had present in the city. So when Y. pestis arrived through caravans, it quite literally exploded among the rodent and flea populations. Subsequently, the whole city was drowned in plague within a matter of months. The disease was then spread through caravans and ships through the commodity of grain. The plague started in East Egypt and spread via trade routes hitting Constantinople, Sicily, Italy, North Africa, and the western region of the Mediterranean. The impact of this was catastrophic. It was estimated that 25 to 50 million people were wiped out in large portions in the eastern Mediterranean and European populations. The city of Constantinople lost 40% of their population, leading to the overall demise of the region's economy. This killed the Byzantine Empire by dismantling their trade and causing complete economic stall. The Justinian outbreak had immense impacts on the Mediterranean and African zones. This showcased the impact the bacteria could have on the world if it was developed further. While the plague was strong, it lacked the ability to reach far distances, which is why it was slowly evaporated and was only prominent for a couple hundred years. Next, we fast forward 800 years to a time where the Silk Road era has reached its highest peak. It has thousands of ships and caravans beginning to explore, so it was at this major point of trade when the Bubonic Plague reached the Mongol army. The Mongol army takedown. To get some background, the Mongol Empire was the biggest and strongest civilization at the time. It had over 500,000 soldiers and was led by a ruthless leader known by the name of Genghis Khan. It easily dominated every single country in Eurasia, and at its peak covered 9 million square miles or 23 million square kilometers of territory. This made it the largest continuous land empire in world history. It was a dominant power that could not be stopped. Because of the sheer size of the army, many of the soldiers were forced into cramped quarters and unclean conditions. So when the bubonic plague arrived, it quickly festered and eliminated large populations of rodents and soldiers. The biggest army in the world had become the largest infected body within weeks. The Mongol army didn't go without spreading the disease further, though. The Black Death origin. We focus on a small city called Kaffa. After years of religious battling and politics, the Mongol army actually invaded the city of Kaffa. However, the Mongol army was already severely infected with the bubonic plague. The battle was tough, but the Mongol army was severely weakened and their populations dwindled. Because of this, the Mongols started launching the dead bodies of infected soldiers to the other side of the wall. Yes, you heard that correctly. They were launching the dead bodies of their own kin to spread the plague into the other army. This method proved effective as the rodent populations inside the city were quickly infected and spread it throughout the entire metropolis. That's when the Mongols started winning despite mass disease filling their entire army. This caused many caravans and citizens to flee on ships. However, they did not account for infected fleas and rodents to be on those vessels as well. These ships carried the diseases further into the European regions through the Baltic Sea. This is the estimated way of how the Black Death got into Europe in the first place. The Black Death. In this current time period, Europe has a very influential control over the trade market. They had an exploding economy and its regional development was unparalleled. But the pattern continued. Millions of its citizens lived in small condensed areas. This also attracted our friends, the rodents and fleas. An important thing to note is the variant of the disease. This variant was called the Black Death for a good reason. It was because it was extremely destructive and caused, death. The main differentiator was the speed of the effects. The Black Death symptoms were severe and quick. Some common signs were weakness, headache, light sensitivity, an unusual tongue, muscle aches, and the most common swollen lymph nodes. These are the black swollen bumps that were defined as the Black Plague. These lymph nodes are used to fight harmful bacteria, so when they swell up, they're actually battling the disease. When they get to this swollen form, they're called buboes, hence the name bubonic plague. So, what was the impact of this? The Black Death ended up killing an estimated 75 to 200 million people across Eurasia during its peak in the mid-14th century. In Europe, the death toll was approximately 25 to 50 million people. This represented a devastating 30 to 60% of the total population at the time. The Black Death had social impacts as well. For instance, the lack of labor and overall resources created more violence in the low-income communities. Many workers were forced into low-paying jobs and it caused big revolutions. On June 2, 1381, 67,000 marched to London to riot against the Duke. They ended up killing several high-up leaders and actually made the king agree to certain terms to fix their low-income economy. While their lives improved a little bit, the king actually went back on what he promised, and the peasant population was still kind of oppressed after they had this riot. However, for the future, it was better because it actually led to better conditions for the living populations. So the Black Plague in total allowed these low-income populations to kind of break the economic gap in between the wealthy and the low-income class. In addition to social impacts, the Black Death created huge amounts of desperation in Europe's economy. Why is this? It's because it created mass inflation. This can be explained in simple economic terms. There was very little workers because of the death toll of the Black Death. Therefore, the GDP went down significantly. There was also a high demand for food. However, traders weren't let into the actual cities with goods because of quarantine standards. So there was a low supply of food to begin with. So there was a high demand, but low supply, leading to huge amounts of inflation for Europe's economy. Cures and solutions. So, if the plague was so dangerous, what did civilians do to help cure the disease? While there are a variety of solutions, most of them fall into one of four categories: animal cures, potions, religious cures, and quarantine and social distancing. Animal cures might be the weirdest style of medicine ever. A popular method would involve rubbing a chicken, on a live chicken butt, on each one of your swollen parts of the skin, and when the chicken died, it was apparently working. Another popular method was leeching. This is where they would suck out the blood from your body, which actually made it harder for the patient to survive due to the loss of the vital liquid, which is important for recovery. The next far-fetched solution was potions. A famous brew contained grinding emeralds and drinking it. Many people couldn't actually afford the solution, so they ended up drinking mercury and arsenic, which killed them faster. Let's just say that brews were not the most effective way to solve the bubonic plague. Another style was religious cures. However, they were not really a solution to begin with. Many religions, such as Islam, actually believed that death by the disease was the path to a better life and actually encouraged getting infected in the first place. So while they were a method for disease, they did quite the opposite of what a solution is supposed to do. The last most effective man made solution was quarantining and social distancing. However, this was not followed by a lot of people, so it wasn't very helpful. The sad reality is that none of these solutions really worked, and the only reason the Black Death was stopped was because it had very little population to infect. It basically got so powerful it no longer had the resources to sustain itself. However, in this scenario, we humans were its resources. So, in conclusion, the plague was one of the most catastrophic events to ever occur. Its impact is unparalleled in every single field, and history shows that. To answer the original question, yes, the Silk Road played an extremely important role in connecting civilizations to spread the plague. However, it isn't just the Silk Road that spread the disease. Was it because the disease was really infectious? Well, yes, but do you also think it is a product of how human civilization connects us to each other? Maybe that is the question we should all be asking ourselves.